All right, so it's 12:01 now. We'll probably still have a few people drop in. But before Julianne starts, we'll go around and do just quick introductions like we normally do. We just try to stick to our name and what our company is or where we work. And if there's anything else you want to add for Julianne right now, we can totally do that too. But normally what works best is sending in questions throughout the chat as we go. And then I'm sure Julianne's going to open it up to discussion throughout. But yeah, so I'll start. I'm Rachel Adams. I know pretty much all of you in here right now, and I'm the marketing and events coordinator at Startup Zone. I'm really excited for Julianne's workshop today. I think it's a really important topic, not just for people who lead teams, but also just leaders in a company, people who are getting used to leading themselves while they're working from home. I think all the things that Julianne talks about are pretty easy to apply to all of our positions right now, so I'm really looking forward to it. And then we'll kind of go around, and I'll just go the order I see people on my screen. So Sandy, if you want to go next.
My name's Sandy Slade. We're starting ADHD PEI and looking into doing more like leading stuff and helping people with doing the parents group and doing some other stuff that we're starting up. And it's more of like less on the ground and more like trying to get other people to do it, or help other people to do it. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Sparrow?
Hi, I'm Sarah Gallen. I'm a company with Canada, but I'm also on the board of
Your audio was a little bit funny there, Sparrow.
I'm Sparrow. My company is ShopSpotter, and it's an early stage tech startup. I'm also on the board of Growing CPI. That's kind of
Awesome. Thanks for coming, Sparrow. Alex?
Hi, my name's Alex Benbaker, and I'm going to be the chef and owner of Inglenook Restaurant in Bonshaw, and still in the developmental stages of that.
Awesome. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol O'Henley, and I'm the co-owner of Exit Realty PEI.
Awesome. Marcia?
I'm Marcia Duran. I am the owner and founder of Level Up Training and Consulting, where we help leaders level up their customer service and their experiences.
Awesome. Steph, are you there?
Hey, I am. Sorry, my camera's off today. I'm kind of
totally fine.
I am Steph with Summer Street Creative, and I am the brand specialist at Startup Zone, but I also own my own little business in graphic design, web design, and strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, Steph. Angela?
Hi, I'm Angela McDonald. I have a consulting company and I do contract CFO work, and I also work with the Startup Zone.
Awesome. Sarah?
Hi, I hope it's okay if I have my camera off as well.
Totally fine.
I'm a master's student at UPEI, and I'm also running a business with my dad that we're just starting in Cavendish called Chapel Hill Cavendish. And there'll be a lot of leadership components, and so I'm just here sort of on behalf to learn a few things to take away.
Awesome. And then last but not least, we have Raj in here.
Hey, hi, I'm Raj. I've got a startup in India. We are into IT, code automation technologies, and I'm working towards setting up a shop here. So I'm doing it from Summerside.
Cool. Thanks for coming out. And then we just had another Startup Zone doppelganger come in. I suspect it's Aaron or Pat.
Hey, yeah, Patrick here.
Thanks for coming out, Pat. All right, sweet. So I guess with that, Julianne, if you want to take it away, and we might have a few more trickle in from here, but I'm really excited to get things underway. And if anyone has any questions throughout, just again, if you weren't here for that little bit at the first, just feel free to throw them into the chat and we'll get to them whenever we can. But yeah.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, thanks everyone for spending your Monday lunchtime with me. I appreciate it. So as Rachel said, I'm Julianne Gauthier, and I'm here to talk to you about conscious leadership today. I'm a leadership coach. I work with Chandler Coaches. We're based out of Charlottetown, PEI here, and we do lots of different types of work with leaders. And I love how at the beginning, Rachel, you kind of attested to this too, is that you don't necessarily have to be in a true leadership role to call yourself a leader. We all have leadership capacity in all of our lives, whether it's at work or at home or in the community. So trying to put that mindset on as you listen to what I share with you today, I think will help serve you in many different facets. So let's jump in. What is conscious leadership? So when we talk about it in this sense, it's really a way to help you identify how you are being with what is occurring right now. So it talks a lot about the person itself, so you as a person and how you're showing up as a leader. When you practice conscious leadership, you're really able to respond to what is happening versus react. And I think, when we have so much uncertainty, certainly what we are experiencing right now with a lot of unknowns in our business and our personal lives, we can be very quick to react to what is happening and get very defensive or feel like there's not enough. How are we going to survive? I'm sure some of these questions are probably resonating with what you've been experiencing over the last 8 weeks, and even just in life in general. And these types of practices can really help you just be able to come at it in a more responsive way so that we can open ourselves up to seeing what are the possibilities instead of feeling like we're limited to just what can we not do. So when we're practicing conscious leadership, it really helps us manage that doubt and that uncertainty that comes up for us. So we can really focus on what matters right now and where can I really focus my attention to ensure that I'm moving myself forward, my company forward, showing up for those people that are really counting on me. When we can be an intentional leader, then it means that we're taking the responsibility for the influence that we have. And I know that sometimes we can feel we forget about the influence that we have of those around us, but there's likely many people in different parts of your life who are looking to you for guidance and for answers. And, we don't necessarily always have them, but through conscious leadership as well, we can get comfortable having that open and honest conversation that we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And it's easy to refer to COVID-19 because I think all of us are experiencing that in different ways right now, but you may have your doors closed right now and you don't know when they're going to open again. You may not know if you're going to be able to open the doors again in a way that seems normal or what used to be for you. And that can be really scary, but you don't necessarily need to just stay on your own and have that own conversation in your head. You can have open and curious conversations about it with others so that you can move yourself forward. So we know there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of questions, there's doubt, there's uncertainty, there's finding new ways of doing things, pivoting our businesses, pivoting our own approaches. A lot is happening right now. But how are we showing up to what we're being faced with? That is what I really want to talk about today. So we have a concept in conscious leadership where we ask you, where are you? And when we refer to this, we're thinking about a horizontal line. And either you're below the line or you're above the line. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. When we're below the line, we're being driven by fear. There's some sort of a threat to us at that time. And I think we all know the fight, flight, freeze kind of scenario, right? So think about that. There's probably a threat coming to us. And usually it's not a physical one. Often it's ego or something, coming at us in that way. Right now with COVID-19, there actually is a health and a physical threat out there. So that's just compounding what's happening to us. So we can really understand why it's so easy for us to show up below the line. And when we're there, a lot of the characteristics that come up for us is that we're being very defensive. Maybe we're closed off to any other possibilities because we're so certain that we know that we're right about this opinion that we have, and we're just going to hold on to it so strongly. we can feel really serious in this time too, right? Because there's fear and there's threat. So you even get those physical sensations, right? Where you feel that tightness and that smallness, because you're feeling that threatened, and it's a very serious feeling for you. And then also the feeling that there's not enough is a big one that comes through too, right? So if you think about what's happening right now, we're looking into the summer, and there's lots of conversations happening about what that's going to look like. We don't know if we're going to be opening up our provincial borders. Is there going to be enough people coming to the island to sustain our businesses, right? Is there going to be enough time to spend with our friends and family in a way that we want to be doing it right now? We can easily find things that are not enough for us right now when we're living our life below the line. So let's look at what being above the line could mean for us. When we're above the line, we can be open to what other possibilities are out there. We can get into a mindset where we get really curious and we ask questions about how it could work instead of being so stuck in how it can't or how it's not. We can get really playful with things too. So instead of taking everything so seriously, can we get a little bit goofy and can we laugh at ourselves? And, yes, there's a lot of serious situations out there, and we're not saying that they're not. But if we can get playful and kind of even just moving our bodies around, that really helps our energy flow in different ways. When we're above the line and able to do that, we're open to more possibility. We have a commitment to learning when we're in this state of mind as well. And we feel much more connected to other people instead of shutting ourselves off or playing small. And then there's also the feeling of abundance. So there's enough for everybody to go around. We don't have to grab our piece of the pie and run off with it because we're worried that there's not going to be enough if someone else gets there first. But we're feeling that there's a sense of everything is here for everybody. So as I said, with being below the line, being really focused on fear, when we're above the line, we're living more in trust. We're being more present. And when you look at the two, because I always like to say this to people, is that above the line doesn't mean good and below the line does not mean bad. It's simply where you are today. And if we're always saying it's good or bad, then you're going to beat yourself up for the times that you're below the line because you're going to attribute that to being bad. Because in reality, we spend most of our time below the line. It's probably not shocking when we look at it, right? And it can be exhausting because we're up and down and up and down, and you might be above the line 1 second and then you see a phone call coming from a number and you're like, oh, below the line I go. And it can be just this crazy roller coaster. And I see some laughing and nodding from those of you on camera. So you get it, right? We would love to live above the line all of our days. How wonderful would that be? But it's not reality, and we're simply lying to ourselves if we say that we just live up there all the time. So the really important thing I want to drive home with this is the ability to know where you are. And again, not saying it's good or bad, but just where am I right now? Am I above the line or am I below the line? And don't worry about that, like what the answer is, just be honest with yourself. Another fun thing I like to point out is that you can't be on the line. I get people trying to do that. They're like, oh, I'm just in the middle. I'm just right there. No, you can't be on the line. You have to pick one or the other. If you're saying you're on the line, I would definitely challenge you and say that you're below because you're not willing to make that decision. And denial is a cornerstone of like unconscious leadership, right? So if you're denying yourself the ability to say where you are, then you're not leading consciously. And it's really being able to spot where you are. Then we move into accepting it. And we're not going to go through all these different stages today because I'm just here to help create awareness. And then I want to have a great conversation about it. But by knowing where you are, that is the first step to being able to take steps to shift. because you can be above the line, and you can build a capacity over time, which I think is really neat. So I often refer to practicing conscious leadership to something like practicing yoga, right? Like, we're never going to be perfect at it. We could be really good one day and then have a bad day, and it can ebb and flow like that. We're always going to be practicing it. But I'm like, where was I going with that? You have to just stay conscious in it and just be accepting and allowing where you are at this given moment, because as we know, so many different things are coming at us in our lives too. And that's okay. How are we responding to them instead of reacting them? And how do we shift? So coming back to that point I was wanting to make is you can build capacity over time. So in the beginning, as you're getting familiar with this, it might be a lot of that up and down, like I was talking about. But over time, you can get to the point where you can spend a little bit more time above the line because you've been putting all of these practices into place consistently. And that just builds that capacity so you can go longer. Think about like running or doing some sort of physical activity like that too, right? The more effort and practice that you put into it, you're going to be able to go further and go longer. So we certainly can build up that capacity for more conscious leadership, more time above the line, which feels really great. So another way that I like to distinguish it too is to look at life is happening to me versus life is happening by me. And when we're saying to me, we're living in that like victimhood, right? So we might be blaming and complaining and wondering, why is this happening to me? It sounds a lot of below the line, right? There's a lot of the same characteristics there. But when we can say that life is happening by me, and we can come above the line and look to appreciate what is happening and see what can we learn from what we are being exposed to right now, or what is coming across my desk. It allows us to take responsibility for what is happening. And that is actually the first commitment of conscious leadership, is taking radical responsibility. And it's one that we look at quite often. So when you're above the line, you're feeling fully responsible for all the circumstances in your life, everything. And like I said, you can't be on the line. So we got to look at, are we taking it all? Or if we're not quite ready, that's okay too. If we're below the line, we're committed to blaming others or blaming ourselves for what's going on in the world. And I think that's an important distinction to make too, is that maybe you don't blame others a lot of the time, but maybe that finger is pointing at yourself. I should have done this, or I should have did this, or if only I could. We can have that narrative in our minds because we place a lot on ourselves, right? As leaders, we want to do a really good job. And sometimes it can feel really lonely too if we don't have a community to connect with or other people to talk to about what we're going through. We allow this voice to keep playing through our minds. So not blaming ourselves, not blaming others, but being able to shift into that responsibility and being really open and curious about what's happening. That's how we can lead from above the line. And that's a beautiful practice too. But just knowing where you are, whether it's below the line or above the line, like I said, is something that I just would love for everyone to be able to walk away today from this session, being able to start catching yourself where you are, because that's really the first step for us to start practicing conscious leadership. And be patient with yourself. It takes some time. And it may be that you're below the line for quite some time, and then you take a few minutes to breathe and you realize, oh, I'm so exhausted. And it's probably because I'm resisting what is happening right now, instead of just taking a few deep breaths and allowing it, and then saying, okay, how do I open myself up to what I'm going to learn from right now? How do I get curious and ask questions and be open to those responses too? Not go on that defense, but in fact, look at how this is serving me and how I'm the creator of what's happening right now. So it's a really exciting practice. I absolutely love it and fully feel so passionate about it. I've been using it so much on myself, especially in this last little while too, where just simply catching myself and either sitting there and being okay with being below the line and just having my little fit or my rant, because that feels really good too, right? We can't just, oh, I'm below the line. Okay, now I'm above the line. Sometimes we need to really work through it. We could have a thing called the drama triangle where we let you just like let it all out and figure out what's going on. And then through that, we're able to shift ourselves into responsibility and come above the line. But there are 15 different commitments to conscious leadership, and I would love to take you through them all today, but I won't. I just simply wanted to start us here and then open up the conversation to see what's resonating with you guys. What are you really feeling out of this you could connect with on your own? And then what I want to hear what's going on with everyone too. There's a great mix of people that joined us today with different types of leadership experience and what you're doing in your leadership right now. So let's just have a good conversation about what's happening, and I'll see how I can help. So thanks, everyone. Any thoughts?
I'll start.
Sure.
I had to turn my camera off. Sorry, guys. I had a baby come in.
Okay.
So for me, I think what resonated really was giving yourself the permission to have a little negative Nancy moment. I think a lot of us feel a lot of pressure to be positive all the time. And that can get really difficult sometimes, especially when you're dealing with right now what I would call maybe a negative environment, right? So I mean, I try the best I can to be as positive as possible, but I think it's really important to know that it's okay to kind of give yourself permission, like, listen, deal with this, be upset or whatever you need to be. And sometimes you just need to hear that it's okay to give yourself permission to feel that way for a while. So I liked that. Yeah. I don't have a question, but
that's okay. No, thanks, Angela. I think that's a great takeaway too, right? Because it's that just comes back to what I was talking about with us blaming ourselves. We could say like, oh, like, why can't you just be more positive right now? Like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so negative and so angry? But we need to be able to feel our feelings. That is another commitment of conscious leadership. And if we keep resisting them, well, they're just going to bottle up, and eventually we're going to explode, right? So if you're in an environment where you can safely do something where you're not, causing a big scene or anything like that, but have your moment and let it out. And maybe that's where you're going to finally find that, oh, this is what I need to do now. But if we're resisting, then we're not allowing the energy to really flow through our bodies. Hey, Marcia.
Hey. I thought it was really interesting because I had a chat with my girlfriend yesterday who's also an entrepreneur. And she's like, I think she said, because I was just really having a hard time pivoting or adapting my business right now in the middle of a pandemic, because I was really niching my specialization in my consulting business. And then all of a sudden I pivoted, and I always said I wasn't going to hustle. Like I said, I'm not hustling anymore. I've done my 30 years of hustling. This is just, she said, I think you're being really hard on yourself, but I think that you don't really know where like, it's not that I don't know where I want to go, but there was a lot of like, no, I'm not doing that. And she's like, are you not doing that? And there was a lot of denial. And you said denial is unconscious leadership. And I'm like, oh my God, like, where am I? That as soon as you said that, I'm like, a great question. Where am I right now? Where am I? And it was interesting about, am I below the line or am I above the line? And I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know I was below the line. I thought I was up here. So that was really interesting to kind of hear that from you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a new concept, right? If you're not familiar with these practices, and like you both said, I see you both as positive people, Angela and Marcia, and lots of other people on here too. So we can believe that that's what we always need to be and where we always are. And then we're kind of putting those false pressures and false pretenses on ourselves and saying like, oh, I'm up here all the time. But in reality, all of us are down here most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's just learning how do we shift back and forth without exhausting ourselves. But it does get easier, to spot where we are, and then easier to find ways to shift as well as we do it more and more often.
The other question, I have, I guess, a question on the conscious leadership. Is it, when you go through the process with you said there's 15 steps or 15 components to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there a lot of like accountability that is in that process too, Julianne?
There is. So like with each of the commitments, really, we're taking the accountability to find our way to shift above the line in them. And a lot of them are quite intertwined as well. So they start off with, we're going to take radical responsibility as number one, for instance. And then we look at speaking candidly and feeling all of our feelings. So we're kind of building on them as we go. Although really you could open up, like they're all in a book, which I have next to me all the time. And you can jump around depending on what circumstances are happening in your life right now, what's going on. Like there's a chapter about there being enough. There's a chapter about play. So each one of them have the same foundation of how we approach each of them from either above or below the line. And that's why we really like to start there and understand that concept before we can really dive more into it. And then we've got a lot of different tools and exercises that we use as we coach people to help them get into those as well. So it's a really neat practice. I think Angela just put the link to the book. Thank you in the chat. What else is coming up for people?
Hey, this is Raj here. I can go. I totally understand and get what you're talking, and I totally accept with that. So when I work with our team, technically speaking, this is what I propose to guys. When we see a problem, let's first accept there is a problem. Without me accepting a problem, my mind is not going to start looking out for a solution. So that's how we used to work. When I'm doing that very well with the team on that front, but on the personal front, I don't see that doing all the time. So when we really get through problems, test out, and we are always with that. I don't take a step back and realize that I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
When I can apply on one end, I'm not able to apply the same stuff on the other end. But I get what you're talking.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So you're able to apply this, if I'm understanding you correctly, to a situation that's happening. But if you were to look at how do I apply this to myself, that's where it's a little bit more of a struggle.
Yeah. So I can apply this when it happens within our team or company. But when it is happening outside our team or company with a client, I don't handle it well.
Sounds like you could practice some conscious leadership. And don't beat yourself up over it, Raj. It comes with time, right? And so now you have this awareness. And so think about how could this be something that you take forward now after this call and apply it to yourself. So if you start to recognize some of those characteristics I talked about being above or below the line, if you catch yourself feeling defensive or that there's not enough or just being really serious, take a step back and maybe a few deep breaths and try to look at things a little bit differently. And that would be a great just starting point to start practicing this conscious leadership for yourself.
Okay.
What else, folks? I know there's some questions stewing out there. I can see that on your faces. Sandy?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the difference between what is it like you were talking about, being hard on yourself versus taking radical responsibility. Because a lot of times you can see that, when someone's saying taking radical responsibility, they're like, don't accept any excuses, and you're like whip yourself into a frenzy of trying to like get yourself to figure it out, right? So I think that there's an interesting balance there that I'm wondering if you could speak to a little more, because I think people either fall on one side or the other. They're gonna stay up for 48 hours to get the thing done because they're gonna work themselves into a sweat to do it, or they're going like trying to hustle it and do it, or they don't do it, and then you're like, piece of shit. Excuse my language, but it's like, oh, I didn't get it done, So then you're like super hard on yourself. So finding that balance between taking responsibility and not beating yourself up is interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as leaders and small business owners, that can come up a lot for us because sometimes there's a lot riding on us, right? So if you think about it in the sense of responsibility is coming and you're either above or below the line of it. So when you said you didn't get things done, what is your approach to not getting things done? Are you now telling yourself that you're not enough, that you're not good enough? Maybe you're looking, there's not enough time. There's no way I would have gotten that done anyway. Or do you say, how could I have done this differently? What can I learn from this experience of missing this deadline? Do you see the difference between the two there? The types of questions that you're asking yourself. So it may not change the outcome when it comes down to it. So that's the content, right? The who, the what, the where, the when. But you can change the context of how you're coming at it. So whether it's while you're in the middle of something happening, and are you asking those types of questions to yourself, or like the example you said, so you've worked really hard, you still missed your deadline. Are we learning from it? Or are we being defensive and saying, oh, well, the other department didn't give us enough lead time for us to do our part, so it's their fault anyway, that we were set up for failure in the first place? Or do you say, how do we work better with that other department so next time this doesn't happen? So we're coming at it from a more open and curious mindset instead of placing the blame either on ourselves or circumstances or other people. So try to think of the content as what it is, and then where are you coming towards it? Does that make sense? Any other thoughts, questions?
Hey, Julianne.
Hi, Alex.
So yeah, one of the earlier things you talked about, I wrote it down. You said through conscious leadership, you can have open and honest conversations, and you spoke not only with others but also with yourself in your head. That was something I liked, and I took away from that. And in my position where I'm a chef, and I'm hopefully going to be opening this restaurant next spring in 2021. There's quite a hierarchy in restaurants where, again, you have your fearless leader, the head chef, and then this huge totem pole of other workers beneath you. And again, I've had a couple roles where I've had to be quite diligent and have the role as a leader. But again, this is going to be my baby. I'm just wondering what kind of tips or wisdom you would have to kind of have that leadership role, and especially going into a business where it's new.
Absolutely. I can understand that. In fact, my first ever leadership role was in a restaurant.
Okay.
And I have many years of managing restaurants. I was never a head chef. But I can understand where you're coming from. And I think as you look to open, and you're, about a year out now, so it's great that you're putting in the work and the plans and taking the time to be building what you really want, because it, like you said, it's your baby. Be very picky about who you bring into your team, right? Like, be very clear on what you want, and then bring the right people in. One of my favorite lines in any type of leadership is, I don't want just butts and seats. I want the right people on my team who understand my philosophy and the dream that I have here, right? So before you can start bringing people on board, you need to make sure you're very clear on what that is for you also, so that you can articulate it.
Great.
Because if you're not really sure, that it's going to be really hard for other people to live out that dream and follow those values. So that would probably be my first piece of advice. But think of yourself as that above the line and below the line too, right? So how, as a leader, can I work on being committed to learning? So things are going to go wrong in any business, but restaurants are tricky too. And we have anytime we have the element of customer service in there too. And we have lovely Marcia on here as well, which that's her expertise. She can definitely speak a lot to that, but it does add an extra element. So be open and curious about how can we learn from what's happening? How can we do better? And how can we not be so close-gripped and serious about everything that's happening that we can't see the forest through the trees, right?
Lovely.
So think of that mindset as you're building all of this out too. And be that way from day one. I think sometimes as a leader, or especially a new leader, we feel like we have to be that like iron fist and really show like I'm the boss, but that might not be the best way that your people are going to respond to it too. So as you become, and do you have leadership experience from before, Alex, or will this be kind of your...
No, I've had a couple sous chef positions where you're kind of the right-hand man to the head chef whenever they're in absence.
Perfect. Yeah, so you've got some experience, right? So I would also recommend reflecting on that and saying, what are some things that went really, really well? And how do I continue that and bring that into my own business? And what are some things that I didn't do as well as I could have maybe, or that I can learn from?
Okay.
And I always like to look too at other leaders that you maybe have worked with or for, and what characteristics did they have that you loved? What types of things were they doing that you would like to emulate? And what things will you never do because of that? But just staying really open and curious. I think I'm really excited to see how this all folds out for you. I think you're on the right path.
Thanks so much, Julianne. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah, Marcia.
Hey. So how does the process work? Like, how does this all work going forward? Like, this was a really great kind of like eye opener of what you guys do over there, and how does this work?
How does it work?
How does this work?
So we have a few different things that we do. In fact, I have, if today was very interesting for you, I do have a course that starts tomorrow about conscious leadership. And it's 4 weeks where we really dive a lot deeper into what I talked about today. And that's something that we'll continue to offer several times a year. We took what we used to have as a half-day in-person session called Experience Conscious Leadership, and we had to pivot and find a way to do it virtually. So we thought we'd break it into 4 separate weeks, 1 hour at a time, just to give it time to really digest. We also do one-on-one coaching with people. So if you're interested, we would go down that route, and we bring in, with that one, it's more tailored to specifically what your needs are, which is nice too. And then we also do group forums. So right now we're planning for the forums that we're going to start in the fall. We have a couple different options that we're going to be tweezing out in the next few weeks, and then we'll be sharing that. And that's where you come together with a cohort of 6 to 8 leaders from different industries, different backgrounds, whatnot. So it's almost kind of like when you're in school, like, you know, the group work that you would have done when you did your MBA. And you work together with that same group for roughly 8 months, where you come together for a full day session and work through the different commitments of conscious leadership, learn how to be a stronger coach and leader within your own teams and organizations. And you build a really great network that way too, which is really great. So we have a few options. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Anything else on anyone's mind?
So I can just speak to the fact that I'm just finishing up actually the one with the cohort. So we started back in September, and when we were able, met in person one day a month at the space downtown. And so we kind of went through the process together as a cohort. We then just pivoted, and it's now online. So our last meeting session is this Thursday online. And I can't tell you enough good things about it. It was very beneficial, especially in times like this when I did have to lead a team through the COVID-19 and still am. A lot of the skills that I learned were invaluable in, taking me through this. So I highly recommend. Julianne wasn't part of it. She came on board later, but I've also been on the free forums that they've been offering over the last number of weeks. And even that was very, very beneficial, even though I had been going through the cohort. Like Julianne says, it's something that you really have to practice. So even though I've put a lot of time into learning these things, I get something new out of it every single time. So yeah, I would highly recommend being involved in whatever way works for you, because you'll definitely get something out of it.
Thanks, Carol. We like to joke that Carol's like my little fangirl too, because I see her everywhere.
I'm her stalker.
I'm your fangirl too, though, so it goes in both directions. Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, I can let you guys all head off on the rest of your day. But I did want to say that I appreciate you taking the time to come and learn and listen and just ask your questions and whatnot. I hope that what we talked about today will help you start even catching yourself. And if you ask yourself where you are as a beginner and starting, and if you ever want to connect or talk more, by all means, please do. I hang out on social media a lot, so you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, or all of our programs are listed on the Chandler Coaches website as well. Like I said, we do have that course starting tomorrow, so if you do have any interest in it, let me know. It's just $150 for 4 weeks, which is a really great price and going to be a lot of really great value. So I'll pop the link in the comments here too, and that way, if you're interested, great. If not, that's cool too. But it at least brings you to our website, and you can see what else we have to offer and how you can get in touch with us going forward. But and keep me posted on your leadership journeys too. I always love to hear what's happening with people. Some of you are established business owners, some of you are just getting started, some are in between, and that really excites me. And I'd love to hear what's going well with you, what are you struggling with, because then also I can work with Rachel to do more tailored workshops in the future as well that'll be more specific to what might be helpful for you. So keep us posted. Let's keep the conversation going.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Julianne. And thanks everyone for coming out. If anyone has any more questions for you after this, Julianne, is there a good place that they can contact you? Maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I'll throw my email in here. And yeah, you can shoot me an email at any time if you have any questions or things that pop up for you. And we can either do that back and forth, or we can just hop on a Zoom and have a chat. Love that.
Awesome.
Thanks, girl. Thank you.
Rachel. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah.